Welcome to QueerTWENTY by Ego Monk. It is the annual celebration of 20 queer Indians who have made a mark in the fields of business, technology, and society. Today we are joined by Ishaan Sethi, founder of Delta app, who's presently working with Cred. Ishaan, when did you first decide to come out of the closet?
I was actually very lucky. I happened to go to Brown, which is one of the most liberal universities out there. A huge part of our student body does identify as LGBTQ. And when I say student body, I don't mean just our students, but literally the entire university, right? So we have so many professors who are out and so on and so forth. That's kind of what really got me thinking about the fact that if I didn't come out then, I would never be surrounded by such an accepting community anyway, right? Even if it was a bubble. I was still worried, obviously, because like most people from our society, my biggest fear was, oh, but what if this other Indian kid finds out whose parents know my parents, and then also it'll come back. And then my sophomore year, I ended up getting an internship at Nike, and Nike is actually globally one of the best, if not the best, equal opportunity employer. Right? They do a lot with the queer community. I ended up working there for about 3 months, and it was at Nike wherein I decided that I'm going to come out because it was the first time in my life that I'd moved to a new city, completely financially independent, right? So it was to that thesis of, if not now, then when. So I ended up doing that at the time, and then so that was about 10 years ago now.
Can you talk a little bit about the type of support system that you've had growing up?
I found a lot more comfort in my friendships, and even to this day, I find a lot more security and comfort in my relationships with women. I've always actually been surrounded by really strong women. My mom, my grandparents, and I've really been inspired by their journeys, right? So a lot of times, girls have been my closest friends, my confidants, and I think there's just been that trust. And for whatever reasons, the guys couldn't handle it then, and anything from being called names that you would hear, to comments on my behavior, to comments on my relationships, at times physical bullying and stuff. I mean, it all happened, right? And I can talk about it very easily now because I've been through 15 years of therapy to deal with those consequences.
Therapy is something people are reluctant to undergo. Could you tell us how therapy helped you become the person you are today, or what the role of therapy was in your life?
Yeah, therapy helped me because I had started becoming a very vindictive human being. You know, the only thing I could think about was, how do I get back at this person? How do I expose this person for the horrible person that they are? How do I make them feel as little and pathetic as they've made me feel? And I couldn't shake my mind off of these things, right? Like I was very much ruled by this ego. So therapy really helped me from that perspective. Where therapy really helped me the most was, when I reached Brown was, I think, the tipping point for me, or the straw that broke the camel's back, because suddenly I was around people who were just out of the closet and just really happy, right? Like they didn't give a shit. Like we would be at a campus party, and on the dance floor there were guys and girls making out, and there were two guys making out, and there were two girls making out, and then there was Brown's also very liberal, and there were four people making out, and you're just what is going on, and I was still dealing with my sexuality there, right? And it's not just about kind of the physical attraction, it was also you'd see seniors who've been together, two guys who've been together for throughout their experience at college and stuff, and our professors who were married with their partners. So it was very much just okay, these people are all gay and they've embraced it. If not just embraced it, they celebrate it, they talk about it, they're so happy. And that, to be honest, at first really started irritating me. It would make me so angry because I just never thought if I would have that in my life, right? And then when I started seeing a therapist, even at Brown, it took about a year, and like I said, then going to Nike as well, where eventually I did it. And after that, my life changed.
And what was the thought behind creating Delta? And what was the response? Did it match up to your expectations when you first launched it?
Sure. So I had been in the US for about 7 years when I decided, 8 years when I decided I wanted to come back. to set up my own company, right? When I moved back to India, this was the second time in my life. So going from, so I'd been going to the States a lot because most of my family is there. And as a family, my parents are incredibly liberal, very supportive, very liberal parents. I mean, they are like any other Indian parents, took some time getting used to things. And not just Indian parents, but any parent. Um, but they're my biggest support system today, right? So, as much as it felt like, I went suddenly years in the future when I went from DPS Puram to Brown. Um, when I came back from the US to India in 2014, um, it suddenly felt like, shit, what have I done? Right? I went from being this gay guy living in Chelsea in New York City, which is the hub of all the gays in New York, to suddenly coming to Delhi, where again I was like, wait, what is happening? And I started kind of, and it was very different for me this time. So this time when I came around, most of my core group of friends who I grew up with had left the country. They had all gone back for their masters and here and there, right, or moved to different cities. Came back and kind of just didn't know many people. A few of my friends who were left were still here. Didn't know any gay people in India at all. Like, did not know one person who identified as gay. And started kind of, I mean, where do you start to look for people, right? Grinder. Started kind of looking for people on Grinder and realized very quickly that the whole app was kind of a shit show. It was very scary at the time. There were all these kids who were like 16 or 17 pretending to be 23 or 24, soliciting. Half the people were prostitutes, soliciting sex for money. The other half were talking about drugs and stuff. And not just talking, I mean, talking about some like crazy shit. Um, and then I just realized that I literally have no avenue to meet people. I have no avenue to meet people. I have no avenue to talk to people. It was the first time in my life that I realized I was missing gay friends because when I was in the States, this is post federal marriage equality and stuff was passed, right, under Obama. So at least in the small bubble that New York City was and Brown was, you did not think of your friends as, oh, here is my gay friend, here's my black friend, here's my lesbian friend. These were all just your friends, right? It was only when I came back to India, I suddenly was like, okay, there's a couple of things I want to talk about, but I can't talk about them to like my cisgendered straight male friends because they won't get it. I can't talk about it to my girlfriends because they won't get it. And that's when I started realizing I just have no gay friends here. And that's kind of what got the idea going for. Is there a safe space where we can create such a platform? And there's a gentleman named Sachin Bhatia who was the former co-founder and CMO for Make My Trip. He also founded Truly Madly. Um, he is someone I met through my first startup in analytics. And we got along really well. And he kind of just shared the idea that he wanted to tap into the dating space more from a cause perspective as well, to create such a platform. But because he's an ally, he is a true ally, right? He's a straight guy, has a family, has his kids, but did not want to do it on his own because he was like, and I really appreciated him for this. He was like, I can't do this because I don't understand the community and I don't want to be some straight heteronormative Indian white skinned male who has all the privilege in the world to come and say, I am here to rescue the gays, right? He was like, I'd much rather if you are someone who feels for this as well, and you definitely have more insight. So yeah, we got talking and that's how Delta.
So when Delta came out as an app for the first time, did the response you received match up to your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, right, I've been very fortunate as my journey at least evolved that um, my friends are incredible. I'm someone who tends to be more about just like, I'm okay, how should I explain it? I'm the kind of guy who has like 10 friends and I'm very happy with 10 friends. I don't want more friends. I reached that point in my life where like I'm very happy with the group of people I know and trust. Because of everything I've been through in life, I'm not someone who trusts very quickly. My walls are usually up when I meet someone new. A lot of people take that as, oh, Ishaan can be intimidating, right? And I'm okay with that because um, I've been burnt enough times to not let my guard down. So, and again, this was all part of growing up gay in the country, right? So, for me, my experience was actually pretty incredible. I mean, there were some hiccups along the way. My mom, for example, had a little bit of anxiety about this going into the public space, the blurring of professional and personal lines, that you are gay as an individual, but why do you want to make your work life about that as well? Which is, I mean, I completely get it. Um, and so apart from those few hiccups, it was okay. I did get the thing is, I realized the best way to deal with trolls is to either educate them or just block them instead of engaging with them.
And do you think coming from a certain amount of privilege has eased your journey a little bit?
Me again and again, which honestly used to piss me off so much in the beginning. But now I've come to terms with it. Was, oh, what does this light skinned Punjabi uh, guy who has parents, who have whatever studied abroad, this, that, and the other, basically being privileged, talking about the experience of being gay in India, right? So that was what I would often get is about privilege, privilege, privilege. What does this guy know about the Indian experience? And my response was always that I don't claim to know what every single person in this country goes through. But I know my experience and I know the experience people I've spoken to have had. And I'm doing what I can using my privilege to help out in that sense. Um, and I think that's a great thing to do. That was what used to irritate me so much when, Keshav and I have worked very closely together. We're very dear friends as well. And I've seen him deal with, how low he used to feel when people would just, slap him in the face with this comment about privilege. And it was just sad to see because he's someone who's done so much for the community here. Whether it's creating the Lalit or Kirisu as a safe space, whether it's his own work with his foundation today, the Keshasuri Foundation, whether it's him petitioning against C77. I mean, you name it, the guy's done it. And for after all of that, he doesn't want someone to thank him, right? But you also don't want someone to just constantly put you down. So for me, it was always about the privilege aspect. And like I said, I learned very quickly in my life to put up a wall and kind of just listen to what I had to listen to and ignore the rest.
And how inclusive do you think Indian startups are towards the queer community when we have to compare it with, say, corporate
I
India?
don't think there's one way to answer that question, right? You can look at examples in both where you'll find some stellar brands that are committed to inclusion, and you can find brands that are entirely backward and, in my mind, have no place in today's world, right? Um, I'll give you a simple example. In the corporate world, for all your large MNCs, your Facebooks and Googles and Amazons of the world, you have employee ERGs and all of that, right? These are still your MNCs. If you look at true Indian companies, such as, let's say, a Godrej, right? Parmesh is doing some incredible work there. Again, a good friend of mine, right? So you can have examples of both. At the same time, in the startup ecosystem, you'll find some incredible startups doing incredible things. Urban Clap, for example, has been dedicated to inclusion and work with us consistently. I currently work at a company called Cred, which is now, I moved on from Delta as well, and I work at Cred now. I lead brand solutions here. Um, we're in the fintech space, but incredibly inclusive. There's no problem at all. So even within startups, for example, there are organizations like Out in Tech, right? If you look at the tech ecosystem, like the finance ecosystem, it's very dominated by the male community, often straight males. So a lot of these organizations, such as Out in Tech and Out in Finance and so on, work towards increasing representation for the queer community in these roles, right? So yeah, I would say there isn't a marked difference between corporates and startups per se. Yes, overall, I would like to believe, and I've seen in my experience, that startups tend to be more inclusive and more daring because, to a certain extent, they are run by younger folks who today are more exposed to just, cultural and social values that go beyond archetypes that we're used to. But yeah, I think otherwise, the good and the bad exist in both.